Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. My name is Caroline Heward and I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert. Our show today is Talking Heads, and I'm an expert presenter in today's topic, which is, are you living with obsessive compulsive disorder? It is part of the Mind and Body Connection series. Let's begin. I'd like to start off with a quote from David BECKHAM. He said, "I have got this obsessive compulsive disorder where I have to have everything in a straight line, or everything has to be in pairs." When we think about obsessive compulsive disorder, we think about orderliness and tidiness and neatness and cleanliness. And David BECKHAM certainly shows that in this quote. PAULA POUNDSTONE says, "I was diagnosed a number of years ago with obsessive compulsive disorder, which everyone has to some degree. And I have this really annoying trait where in conversation, I always steer it back to something that happened to me." Do you know people that are like that? I'm sure that you've been in conversations publicly, socially, in family, where whatever the topic and conversation, it always seems to go back to the person unfolding a story about something that happened to them. Even if it's not quite to do with the conversation, somehow or another, it goes back to what they have had happen in their own lives. I'm sure that we all know somebody that does that. So with obsessive compulsive disorder, there are two parts to it that are very, very specific. The obsession part of it is where we're obsessing with thoughts and images. So we're constantly thinking through things and images. And what about this? What about that? And so the thoughts are constant, almost like an anxiety, but you're thinking about them and having big images on whatever you're thinking about. The other part to obsessive compulsive disorder is that the compulsive part is the behavioural part, where the person takes action. So they will act out if they are in an obsessive disorder. They will act out the cleanliness or whatever they're doing. So against anxiety and different to anxiety, the person will actually be doing things rather than just thinking things. Anxiety is where the whole trait of it is that there's a lot of thinking and anxiety happening, where it's all internal. And so you wouldn't know unless the person is actually expressing what they're thinking. But this obsessive compulsive disorder is the behavioural part as well, where they're acting out and doing things. So there are four main types of obsessive compulsive disorder. So let's have a look at these four different types. There are many others, but I want to look at the four main ones. So the first one I'm going to look at is contamination symptoms. And this can be seen where somebody has a real high influence over washing their hands, or having lots of showers, or being clean, or being obsessive about something being clean, or feeling unclean. The person will show very, very strong traits of constantly washing and cleaning. They might be obsessing about their housework. They might be constantly tidying so that they're clean, because they're worried about contamination. And this will stretch to things like foods, where they might be obsessive with dates, best befores, use by, and so they'll be checking out things that aren't not okay, are actually in good condition, but they're obsessed because they might be contaminated, and they will be thinking that something may be contaminated and therefore behaving like something is. And so there'll be a lot of obsession around something being contaminated or unclean or not clean enough. The other main type of OCD is symmetry and arranging, where somebody arranges things in pairs or rows, or where all the fronts of the bottles are facing outwardly. And there'll be a lot of, if in a wardrobe, for instance, where somebody has this type of OCD, all the white shirts will be together, all the black shirts will be together. All the shoes, the right colour shoes, will all be in the same area. There'll be some orderliness that will show that the person is very organised. This can stretch to the office being very orderly. I've actually been accused of being OCD with my filing because it's very ordered, and my beauty products are very ordered. In fact, in the bathroom, there are rows upon rows. I'm still to take all my beauty products out. But there are rows upon rows of different things, and all the conditioners and shampoos are in one place, and then all the shower gels are in the next row. So it will look like there is a lot of order. I've had some people actually accuse me of being very, very organised, and yet there is disorganisation in the organisation. So this will be very much about arranging things, all same things together, all pairs together. I've actually seen one of my trainer's wardrobes. He showed in one of the trainings that his wardrobe was so organised that he had all his shorts in one area, all hung up, with matching shirts to go with the shorts, because he was in Florida and in the US, and he had all the shoes, same colour shoes together. It was quite extraordinary, all the right ties with the right suits. And so essentially when he packed, he would literally just take out 7 shirts with matching 7 shorts, with matching 7 shoes, and he was away. So there wasn't any sorting. I remember when I was married, my ex-husband would say, "Caroline, you don't pack, you just empty your wardrobe." So I'm not very organized in terms of things like that. But the person that is OCD in this way of arranging and symmetry is that all same things are together, all in a row, or organized with everything front facing. Unacceptable and taboo thoughts. So this might be in relationship to sexual dysfunction. It might be that they're following taboos in terms of their relationships or in their sexual promiscuity or activity. Or they might be talking about things that would be deemed as inappropriate, or what you might call taboo subjects, exploring aspects of life that would be considered as taboo or not of the norm. The other fourth aspect of a main type of OCD is doubt and harm. So with doubt, it'll be that the person is always doubting their ability. They're doubting whether they're good enough in terms of academic wise, good enough in terms of the work ethic and their value within the society, within the friendship, within their working environment. They will doubt their value within their relationship. They will always question, are they good enough for that relationship, and not feel that they are good enough in that relationship. And that can lead to some people being in a state where they will harm themselves to take away the overwhelm of the pain of feeling that they're not good enough, or the overwhelm that they experience of not handling their experiences of emotions. So the OCD cycle, first it starts with an obsession, and that's the thoughts, and they will be very intrusive thoughts. They will be thoughts that will just go round and round, and this is where it can sometimes look like anxiety, that the person is constantly thinking, what about this, what about that, and if I don't do this. So there's thoughts and images that they are going through about the things that may or may not happen, or what people may be thinking or saying about them. And so these obsessions that they have will also have urges of an uncomfortable feeling for the person. This will increase their anxiety because they are literally obsessing with those thoughts and images and thoughts about what hasn't happened or what might happen, which increases the anxiety because all of this is in the mind. It hasn't actually happened, it's all in the mind. And so this is where the anxiety increases. Now, anxiety is that the person is future thinking about what might or might not happen and obsessing about things that haven't happened, but that are happening in their conscious mind. So they're very real to the person, and they will start to respond accordingly. Which leads us into the next part of the cycle, the behavioural part, which is the compulsion to do something, to be somewhere, and to actually act out whatever they are thinking and seeing in their mind, which can result in the person feeling, as they've acted out the behaviour, a temporary form of relief. So, for instance, if the person has a hygiene OCD and is constantly washing their hands or not feeling clean, they will probably spend a lot of time in their housework, and once they've done the housework, they will feel, that feels clean. And then if they've cooked something, they will obsess again about everything not being clean. And so they will then go into a cleaning mode again. And then that temporary relief is over because they're back into the obsession and the thoughts about not being clean, not being right in terms of what they need it to be. Now, of course, we all have an OCD about cleanliness on some level, that, we do shower, we do wash our hands, and we do cook, and you have to wash up after you've cooked, and you have to clean things as you go along. But some people don't have that going on. And so when somebody is in an experience of the other person not being so clean, there will be standards of OCD where the person can't be in the same place because it's not clean enough for them. And I certainly would understand if there were mugs on the draining board that hadn't been cleaned for some time, and crocks on the draining board that hadn't been washed after meals, and food scraps left out, that it would feel uncomfortable for somebody who has a hygiene OCD to feel comfortable in that environment. So are people with OCD emotionally sensitive? Yes, they are very emotionally sensitive. They are energy sensitive in terms of there'll be the slightest thing, they'll be completely okay one minute, and then they can be in a situation, a change of conversation, and suddenly the thoughts come up and they will start to feel uncomfortably emotionally, and they will outpour emotionally. And so the person will be woefully tearful and weepy in front of you. Why are they like that? This is because they've built up things in their mind to such a point that the overwhelm of that buildup of thoughts, the obsession of the pictures, the images, and the urges that they have been thinking about will come out. And it'll almost seem over the top to somebody who is in that situation, that suddenly they've burst into tears. That this, from the internal perspective, is a build-up. So it isn't just what's seen on the outside. There's a build-up of what's going on internally for the person. Is OCD a coping mechanism for anxiety? No, it isn't. It's actually there's a part of it that is to do with anxiety, but it isn't a coping mechanism for anxiety, because anxiety is more about thinking about things that aren't real and building them up in your mind. But the OCD is playing out. It has the behavioural part of it, which is different from anxiety, where it's only in the thinking. And so it isn't about acting out the anxiety. OCD is very much the compulsive part. The compulsion is the behavioural part of the OCD. So what cause of trauma causes OCD? Well, I'd like to share with you a case study. I had a client that came to see me, and he had very, very severe OCD. And he said that he was always checking, constantly checking. He would do something and then he would check many times, maybe 20 times, whether it was right, whether he'd shut all the doors, whether he had locked all the doors, whether he had closed the windows. Whatever he was doing, whatever activity he was doing, he would always check and double check and triple check and quadruple check. He would consistently be checking. And he knew that he was doing it, and it did drive him crazy. And so he came to see me saying, "Can you help me?" And I said, "Yes, of course I can." And so we went back to the time that he first experienced it. So in a very gentle exploration of the OCD symptoms. Now, this person was 50 years old. And I asked him what his earliest recollection of the checking came into play for him within his life. And he could recollect when he was 5 years old, 5, and he was 50. So he'd been carrying this for 45 years. And his dad had a garage, and he was a mechanic. And he used to go and visit his dad in the garage. And his dad asked him for a spanner. And so he reached into the tool area and he pulled out a spanner. And his dad completely ripped him apart, saying, "Not that spanner. I don't want that spanner, silly. I want this spanner." And he was completely traumatized by getting the wrong spanner. And since that time, he constantly checked which spanner when he was with his father and what tool his father was asking for, and would check and check and check and check before he handed over any tool to his father. When this was revealed, a 45-year experience, the client was very, very surprised. Now, something as simple as that, being given the wrong spanner, created a very traumatic experience for this guy, and very upsetting for him when he worked out what had caused the OCD of consistently checking. And so it doesn't have to be really big, but at 5 years old, he experienced getting something wrong. And it was so traumatic for this person that he didn't want to get anything wrong ever again. And to make sure he didn't get anything wrong, he checked and checked and checked. So it can be very, very small, but for a child, when something like that happens, there is no evolvement of emotions at that point to be able to comprehend what's happened. And so it gets buried. It gets literally locked in the energy matrix of the body. Now, we are all energy and space. And so when there is trauma that is shut down and blocked away, what happens is the escape route is the mind. And so then the thoughts become the obsession. And the trauma very much lives in the mind of making sure they are never caught out again. How does OCD affect intimacy? Well, because it can affect the promiscuity of someone, it can also affect you the other way too, where you will avoid intimacy. And so somebody that's avoiding intimacy because they don't feel worthy enough, good enough, they don't feel, for a woman, sexy enough or attractive enough or beautiful enough, or they might feel that their performance for a guy isn't acceptable enough or good enough. And so when these thoughts go round and round in the mind, this can cause a sexual dysfunction. It can cause intimacy issues that can become very, very physical, such as erection problems. Because if the mind is full of all of these obsessive thoughts of not being good enough and not feeling that the performance is good enough, then it will affect you physically. Because sexual dysfunction resides in the mind. It's what you're thinking about, and therefore it creates. So if you're thinking that your performance isn't going to be acceptable or good enough, then hey presto, that is what is created in terms of your performance in your external world. It might be that you're not feeling sexy enough or for the partner. And if that is the case, that will exude how you are feeling about yourself. And so there will be an abstinence of experiencing and being in that intimacy with your partner. And so very much OCD will affect your intimacy in quite a big way. And many people, certainly if there's been something that's happened in the relationship, if somebody has cheated on the other person, or if there's been a miscarriage, then there will be, for many people, an abstinence. It's because they're not feeling worthy or they're not feeling okay to allow that connection in terms of the intimacy. So it's very big for OCD people, where they can be over the top in terms of promiscuity and, having many partners, to being on the other side of the coin, having a control of how much somebody is allowed to come into their space. Are people with OCD controlling in relationships? Yes, they are, because they will put their standards onto you. They'll project their standards onto you. Now, what do I mean by that? If somebody likes a lot of orderliness and a lot of tidiness in terms of everything being in a row, everything being in straight lines, everything all saying things together, and their partner is very erratic in terms of they're not orderly, they're not sorted in terms of tidiness and bringing things together or putting things away. I remember when I was growing up, my mum used to say, everything has a place and everything should be in its place. And my mum was very, very tidy, very clean. And she used to get really cross with me when I was a child and studying, because I'd have books everywhere. So the room, my bedroom, was never tidy, and that used to drive her up the wall. And for me, that was my tidiness, because I needed all the different books, the different references to do homeworks and to do the study that I was doing. And so, this can portray in different levels of acceptance of what is tidy and organized. And when somebody doesn't have that tidiness or that cleanliness or that OCD behavioural adopted by their partner or in the family, this will have an effect in terms of the standard not being adhered to or applied within the relationship. And this can cause all sorts of problems, because the other person will see that there's nothing wrong and will be upset that they're being themselves. And the person with the OCD need for control, need for the orderliness, or need for the cleanness, the hygiene, need for everything being ordered and everything being in its place, will go completely stir crazy, because it's not in keeping with what they need. And that need, that desire for orderliness, control, will give control. And this is because deep down inside, internally, they feel that there's no control, which is why it's externally displaying as a need to be in control. And so they have what might be called a set of rules or standards that they need. And if they're not adhered to, they will feel uncomfortable, and they will feel very, very anxious that those standards are not applied. And that orderliness that they require is affecting their behaviour in terms of needing to sort it, organise it for control. So how do people behave with OCD? How do people with OCD behave in relationships? So we have sort of looked at this in terms of when the person is feeling not smart enough, not good enough, not pretty enough, not talented enough, they will actually have self-esteem issues. And that self-esteem issue that they are experiencing internally will reflect in their external environment, within their family, within their friendships, within their relationships, within their work. And this will appear in different ways. The person might be in a relationship that might be clingy. If the person is clingy, it's because they are concerned, they're unsure of their value, of their worth, and because they're not feeling enough or not feeling good enough, they will be holding on for dear life to make sure that they don't lose what they have. So they will treat people almost to the point of being a possession, because they're not feeling worthy of that relationship or friendship. The other aspect of people being clingy is that they may appear jealous within the relationship. And so they might be checking on your activity or not what you are doing, where you are. And they might be checking in on your phone, by texting, messaging you, checking your social media posts, what are you up to, even when they're not with you. And one of the reasons for that is that internally they are feeling uncomfortable and suffering a space of low self-esteem, that they're not enough for that relationship or that friendship. And so this behaviour is coming out of not being or feeling enough. It's nothing to do with the relationship they're in, and it's nothing to do with the other person. It's something that's going on internally for them. And so that is projected onto the other person because they are feeling all these insecurities. And the insecurities that they are experiencing are coming from something that's happened to them when they were much younger. Generally in childhood, there'll be something there that has happened that has caused this trauma and move them into this place of not feeling enough. Now, when we're born very, very open, goo goo and gaga. We're not thinking or analysing anything, to the point of there is no preconception of a not being enough. We are enough throughout. So these behaviours come out of experiencing within the family, within our peers, where we're told, well, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you'll never be any good at this, you'll never achieve that. So in your lifetime, have you ever had somebody say these kinds of things to you? The thing is, we are like a sponge. And because we're like a sponge, we literally take in everything that people say, especially when we're very young. When we're to 7, 12 years old, we are taking in everything. This is why children learn so quickly. Wherever they are in, they adapt and learn a really, really wide range of subjects because they're like a sponge. They just soak everything up. And that's why it's a good time to learn when you're younger. But if you are constantly being told you're not pretty enough, you're not good enough, you're not tall enough, you're not talented enough, you'll never amount to anything, you're useless, you're worthless, there will come a point that you have taken all of those things in, that you've soaked them in. And if you hear something, if you hear a message enough and constantly, you will then, for whatever reason, start to believe something that somebody is telling you. Not that it is true, because the person that is saying those things are projecting their stuff onto you. It is not your stuff. It becomes yours when you start holding it and taking action internally. When all the thoughts come out, then they become yours. But where did it start? These thoughts were not yours to begin with. And so my invitation to you is to, when you're feeling these things and thinking these things, is to ask yourself, who said that? Where did it come from? Because it definitely wasn't from you. Here's a quote by Amanda Seyfried. I'm too measured and controlling about everything. That's why I take Lexapro. It's for OCD. I don't feel like I'm struggling with it. I think OCD is a part of me that protects me. It's also the part of me that I use in my job in a positive way. I felt this was a really interesting quote to include because this is someone that has decided to own the experiences, the behaviours of obsessive compulsive disorder. She has made a decision for her benefit so that she now owns that she has OCD. She's taking medication for it and she is using it to help her. She sees this as a protection. And that protection, I wonder what from. Because when we're born pure and innocent, not needing protection from anyone or anything. So I wonder what happened that made her say, it's part of me that protects me. And certainly in work, this can lead to people being obsessive about their results to such a point that they will be huge achievers and very high performers. They will always succeed, even though it'll be to the detriment of how they live and how they experience life externally and internally. And this does affect your relationships, whether you're in an intimate relationship, whether you're with family, friends, or colleagues. This will have an impact. The thoughts are not the problem. Let OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, tell you whatever it wants. Just don't try to solve it. The thoughts are not the problem. Your choice to take them seriously is the problem. The thoughts are not you, and the scenario they present is not real. OCD is the disorder of doubt. Stop all doubt, and you will stop OCD. I thought that was a really powerful addition to this presentation, because if it is just the thoughts, it is then anxiety. It is what we decide to act upon that creates the OCD, the disorder of the behaviour. And this isn't about saying this is all nonsense and just stop it. This is about making a choice. This is about making a choice of what feels right for you and good for you, and looking at where this appeared, where the problem started, and identifying what created the OCD. Because I promise you, you were not born with OCD. It comes from a trauma that's been undealt with in childhood. Thank you for your attention and your interest. Please subscribe to USA Global TV and Radio. You can find all of our episodes, our Talking Heads episodes, under the playlist Talking Heads 2023 for this year and 2022 for last year. You can find all of my Talking Heads episodes under my name, Caroline Heward. Please do reach out to me if I can be of service to you. I help all manner of problems that people have, and as the case study that I shared with you, it can be something that almost sounds ridiculously simple and silly to share. There's always a reason behind every OCD behaviour. Behind every OCD, there is a trauma that's been undealt with and pushed down. I look forward to helping you. Please do reach out to me by email on nomorestress@live.co.uk, or call me on +44 if you're not international, 07523 120 189 if you are local. I look forward to helping you bust your obsessive compulsive disorder.